It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, February 14th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is in love with our college prospects on this Valentine's Day.
I see what you did.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, including Blue Sky, and of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So before we get to some of those college and college-bound prospects, as well as draft-eligible prospect Ryker Lee, who you had a chance to talk to, so very excited to hear about him as a potential Flyers pick. We have been talking, obviously, about the Four Nations tournament here, and we're going to recap all of the action on Monday in the tournament so far. But Gary Bettman had a press conference, as he usually does around these big league events up in Montreal. And they announced officially something that had been talked about for quite some time now, that there would be a World Cup of hockey event that would kind of cycle every 2 years with the Olympics as a way to keep the international flavor and keep the NHL players involved. So the first one would essentially be in 2028 because we have the Olympics next year, right?
Yeah, and make more money, Rachel.
Well, yes, that's what it's always about, right?
Because the
Selling
players are
jerseys.
getting paid for
Yeah.
World Cup. It's just nothing close to what they can normally get paid, and there is a winner's pot. Chris Johnston put all this out yesterday. That gets split up. So, yeah, they're not doing it for free. It's interesting because, they mentioned the 8 teams, and then when you start looking at all the countries, you realize, well, somebody's getting left out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
go ahead.
it seems like the Four Nations teams are a lock, right?
Yes.
So USA, Canada, Finland, Sweden. And of course that makes logical sense, right?
Yes.
Then you have like a couple of European teams that probably should be in something like Four Nations, but aren't because of the NHL level representation, maybe isn't quite enough. So that's your Czechia and your Slovakia, right?
Yeah, but Czechia has a lot of good players now, so I don't think it's Czechia that gets left out. I think it's either
No, I
Slovakia.
know. That's what I'm saying. They
I'm
should
sorry, I
be in.
misunderstood. Yes, they'll be in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, they are kind of like the teams that in a perfect world, like they would have been in this something like Four
Correct.
Nations, but we're not because they decided to only do 4 countries this first time
Yeah, they
around.
gave it it's new. They got to get it off the ground.
Yeah, that's where the questions now come up with the remaining teams, right?
Right. So I'm going to think about it through an NHL lens. And so through an NHL lens, I mean, Germany, you got Draisaitl and Stützle. They're making it
Mm-hmm.
because they want those guys to continue to get marketed. And Draisaitl is one of the 5 best players in the league, 5 or 6. So Switzerland, you still have a lot of good players. Nico Hischier, probably the best, or Roman Josi. Take your pick. And Slovakia, you could find a few too, but I think it's going to come down to Slovakia or Russia. That's where I think the dividing line is.
Right. So if you look at the percentages in the NHL, now you say Germany. Germany is the lowest
I know,
percentage of all of the major
but they had
countries.
big stars,
They
Seider.
do. Right. Right. And that's why I feel like Germany gets the edge here over Switzerland, even though there
Right.
are technically more Swiss
Yeah.
players in the league. But yeah, the Russia factor is the biggest question, is because in like, who knows what's going to be in
Yeah,
2028? I
we
mean,
don't
let
know.
alone 2026 for the Olympics,
Right.
right?
Well, it seems like from what I've been seeing, reading, hearing, that there'll be another OAR situation for the Olympics that they did the last time. So Russians can play, just not under the Russian flag and no Russian anthem. And we'll all pretend they're not Russian and they are, and they'll play in the Olympics. So, but with this, it's different. So I feel like Russia's probably going to get in, and feel like it'll be Slovakia that
World Cup.
for the World Cup. I
Yeah.
feel like that's what's going to happen, but I can't. Nobody can guarantee it right now.
I know. Like, I just keep thinking, well, in a crazy world, is there a way where they actually sort of recombine Czechia and Slovakia and make a super team just
They
to get both
could,
countries' players in, right?
and maybe that will be the solution, and nobody's left out
Even
then.
though they're rivals
Right.
in the real world. And I guess Team Europe was rivals in the real world too, and they figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, look, not everybody was friends in Suicide Squad, right? But they were all on the
Yeah,
same team there too.
that's
Just
true.
saying.
That is definitely true. So, it'll be interesting. And I think we'll see at the end of Four Nations in terms of, are there any injuries? Like, what were the implications? In terms of how owners feel about it, how
Right.
management feels about it, in terms of how dedicated people are going to be to this concept when it's not just every four
Well, I
years.
mean, all you have to do is ask the Russian players once; they'll be there. Like, it's not
Right.
even a question. Panarin was already complaining, and I don't blame him. Guys like Michkov and there's so many Russians, Vasilevsky, they're all going to want to play.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Now, the other aspect of it is, where is it? They are going to take bids from North American and European cities. Now, it'd be interesting if, they had it in Japan or something like that. But for
I don't
now,
think they'll do that.
I don't think they will because of time zone and ratings and all
Right.
of that. But I do think it'll be really interesting to see, is it going to be in two cities like Four
Yeah, I
Nations
think it will
is?
be. I think it will be. I think it'll be in a North American and European city. That's what I think.
Yeah. Now, that sort of begs the question, should Philadelphia put in for it
I
as
mean, they
one of the North
should, but I don't
American
know if they
cities?
will. My my gut feeling tells me this is like a Vegas thing.
Mm,
This feels
that is
Vegasy,
unfortunate, but true.
right?
Like,
It just feels Vegasy. So I feel like they're going to be the North America. Just because, and this is going to sound like contrite, but just because of the way of the world, choosing Switzerland is not a bad idea because nothing ever goes on in Switzerland. Like, I'm just saying,
no,
you could plan on it,
that's just where you hide things you don't want people to find,
right? But they have
right?
good fans too. They do.
They do. No, they do. It's a really great hockey community there. I mean, it's I think it has to be in a place that has a team. That's the question I have. Like,
Right.
would
And I
they
don't
have
think,
it in Switzerland if Switzerland isn't
no, I
playing?
know.
No.
No. But the thing is, I think Germany's like a bridge too far. I think that's kind of hard. And so I think they're not going to have it in Slovakia, I don't think, even if Slovakia
No.
makes it. Russia, they're
I
not
just
having it in. There's definitely zero chance of having it in Russia.
yeah. It's just interesting because I feel like, as far as the European games for the NHL, like, Finland, Sweden, and Czechia are played out, like, in my
Correct. And
opinion.
that's why I'm checking Switzerland because everything
Yeah.
has been in Finland and Switzerland lately. They did have the Czech Republic too, right? They
Yeah. I
included
mean,
them.
they do like the early season
Right.
NHL games in
England has been
Prague.
included.
Yeah.
So I think Switzerland's a good choice.
I do too. It'll just depend on if they actually have a team.
There's good
And that'll
chocolate there. Anybody who goes, bring me back chocolate or watches. I'm happy with
yeah.
either.
Well, once again, we have quite a bit of time before decisions are
Ah,
made on this. Haha, Switzerland clocks. Anyway, um, I think, as far as the event itself, like, is it too much to have it every 2 years? Like, between having the Olympics and a World Cup, best on best is great, but does it then sort of become like played out in the same way that some people see the outdoor games
I
for
don't
the
know. Nobody
NHL.
complained about the Canada Cup and all those other series back in the day. I don't remember there being big complaints. But to be honest, I lost track as to why they went away too. I really don't
Mm.
remember why that all stopped. Uh, so I feel like for a while this will be fine, and then just like NHL fans complain about the Winter Classic, they'll eventually complain about this. But I don't think for a while. I think you can get a good decade out of it,
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then they'll
and then the
see how
complaints will roll in.
yeah, and that will most likely not be our problem at
No,
that point. So,
no,
yeah, we'll see what happens, and again, we'll kind of reassess at the end of Four Nations to
yeah.
see how the league and the players and everybody
I mean,
feels
how old will
moving
Sean be
forward.
in 10 years? I have to ask him. I don't know.
I don't know either, but in the meantime, we're continuing to check in on Flyers prospects during this break in the Philadelphia Flyers action. And we're going to take a look at some of the college or college bound prospects coming up next.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 at bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right. So there are several Flyers prospects in the NCAA right now, and quite a few of them are not signed.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of looking at the pecking order of guys and what order they might be signed, if they're signed at all, I feel like Alex Bump is at the top of the list
Yeah, I
right
think that's
now.
fair.
He is at Western Michigan right now, technically in his sophomore year there. And, he's 21 years old, though, obviously, because, of the way that development works.
Well,
So
he
he
stayed in the
isn't like,
USHL, I think, 2 years.
yeah,
That's so that was
yeah,
yeah.
he did. But he was the fifth rounder in 2022. So this is a depth pick that has
Mm-hmm.
like developed pretty strongly over the past several years. He wears an A for that team. And he leads that team in overall scoring and is second on the team in goals, which is like nothing to sneeze at for Western Michigan, right?
No, no, it's good. It's a good program. I think he's a good player. He's got good drive. I think he has a good shot. He could do a little playmaking. He has some physicality. Doesn't have a lot of foot speed. That's the only thing that still has to improve for me. Even when I saw him, 6 months ago, I felt like, or 3, 4 months ago, like, your foot speed's not quite there yet, but he has time yet, and that's something where
Hmm.
he just has to get to NHL average foot speed. If he can, then he could be a bottom six guy, but most likely a fourth liner.
Right. Now, Western Michigan is ranked third right now behind Michigan State and BC in the top tier of NCAA hockey, and he plays on their top line. And
Right.
I think that says a lot
It
in
does.
terms of who he is and where he fits in college hockey, right?
Yeah, I think they should sign him after this season, because if he goes back for another year and they don't sign him and he has a bigger year, then it becomes the old, well, can they get him signed, or is he going to just become a senior and then a free agent? And so
Right.
I think now is when you kind of just do it. He'll be in the AHL at 21. You can let him stay there a couple of years, 2, 3 years. It's a
Sounds
good
great to
move.
me.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then the Phantoms desperately need players. So I think it
Oh
would help
God,
him.
yes. Yeah, and he's 15th in NCAA hockey in points per game at
Yeah.
1.15, so he's above a point per game,
Yeah.
23rd
This
in
is the time to
overall
sign him.
scoring. Yeah, this is perfect timing, I think. And to me, he feels a little Noah Cates-ish in terms of development path, not skill, not
Right.
type of
Yeah. There's
player.
definitely a difference between them, but I get what you're saying.
in terms of taking a slightly slower path, but he's going
Hmm.
to get there. And then all of a sudden he's going to blossom at the
Yeah.
pro level. And I feel like that is the potential here for him.
Yeah. I think that's definitely the hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Now, next in the pecking order, I would say is Cole Knuble at
Hmm.
this point. He's in a really interesting situation because he's a sophomore at Notre Dame, was a fourth round pick in 2023. So a year later than
Yeah.
Bump and a round up,
Right.
but plays at a weaker school overall. And, they're not even top 20 right now. The team is not doing great this year overall, which is, I think, tough given the fact, he's playing second line center mostly for this team.
Yep.
But given everything and given, this team has lost 3 of their last 5 games, they've only won 4 of their last 10, but he's still 10th in assists per game right now in NCAA hockey. He's 14th in points per game, literally a step above Bump right now. So he's at 1.17, Bump is
Right.
at 1.15. He's tied with many for 38th overall in scoring and has had a really great run in the last 10 games, 2 goals and 8 assists. And so this is like, a guy that's doing his best and shining in maybe not the best of situations.
Yeah. I mean, I vacillated with Knuble because I mostly like him and liked him and wanted him to get drafted, and he got drafted. Have certainly interviewed him more than a few times and really like his makeup. He's a different player than his dad in the sense that he's faster and he's a better passer, but his dad was like more like the Alex Bump type where he had to kind of work really
Right,
hard,
right.
but Knubel's got, more skills. He's kind of like a third line or bust kind of guy, but he's on a
Right.
good path right now. And the fact is, you could let him still stay in college another year to get the physical strength because I feel like because he's only 20. And
Right.
so, like,
That's the
that's the
difference.
difference. And nobody's like, he's not thinking about being a free agent. He would love to play for his former team that his dad played for. And if the Flyers somehow don't sign him, probably Detroit would. Because if nothing else, he'd be a drawing card in Grand Rapids. Like, that would be
Right.
an easy one.
That's
But
fair.
but I think he still has got the right upswing here, and the speed's good. It's not great, but it's better than a guy like Bump. It's a little better, but his playmaking is really good. Is he going to be a center? I don't know. He's
Right.
5'11". He could do it, but I think the problem will be if they want him to be on the third line, most likely he'll end up on the wing. But he still could be one of those guys that takes faceoffs too. And that's
Right.
fine. That's a good thing. But I do like him, and I think he's had a heck of a year. He's improved on last year. So everything's going right for him.
Right, and that's where, Bump has the edge because he's slightly taller, he's a
Yep.
little bit bigger, and he plays the wing, so there's more
Right.
opportunity
There's
there,
no
right?
no doubt there's more opportunity.
So, I think that's where I think you're spot on, that you let him Cole Knuble stay in college for 1 more year, then you sign him, put
Yep.
him on the Phantoms, and see what
Yeah,
happens.
let
I
him
think
cook, as they say.
yeah, yeah, and I don't think there's any reason to, like, give up on him
No,
yet at all. I
no
think
way.
there's some potential here for sure.
There is.
And I think, again, you hate to say it's just because of the family
No,
connection,
no, but
but
he's a
it's
smart
just
kid, hockey
yeah,
IQ-wise, because of
yeah,
the family. Like, I've
exactly.
spoken to Mike many times, and Mike's a very level-headed, like, even though he played in the NHL, he's like an average kind of guy. Like, you just wouldn't be
Mhm.
able to separate him from just anybody on the street as far as like, oh God, this guy played hockey and he played it at a really high level. You wouldn't. He's a very
Right.
down to earth guy, and I think that has really rubbed off the right way on his son. I don't think there's been this undue pressure of having a father that was in the league, and
Yep.
he has done some coaching with him, and Cole has been on teams that has had NHL coaches for certain, and his former NHL players as like, roving kind of coaches, helping him on faceoffs and things like that. So he's had some good advantages.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Austin Moline
Hmm.
is last year's draft 7th round pick, and he's not in college yet, but he is going to be going to Colorado College
Right.
next year. And, he's like a big guy defenseman playing in the USHL.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's younger. He needs to like put on a lot more mass,
Yeah.
right? But he is the only NHL drafted player on the Madison Capitals right now. He's their top pairing defenseman. And I think like it's really interesting to see like where he is in this path, and the fact that he's choosing to go this route just because he comes from Shattuck. So that's like
Hmm.
high pedigree.
Hmm.
And to go into the USHL, I think it was the right move for him to do.
Yeah, he survived that plane nightmare that we were all on last year. He
Yeah.
he handled that very well, actually. Uh, I like what I saw at the Fall Classic. I remember we talked about it. I tweeted
Hmm.
about him. I thought he was making some plays. I thought the reach was very good. I thought the speed's pretty good already, and I think it will get better. He's at 201. He'll probably be a 220 kind of guy at
Right.
six
Right.
five, and so yeah, there's something here. Uh, if I had to peg what he might be, it might be like a number 5 who plays on the second power play, something like that. I think that's something to shoot for him, and I think he might get there, but it's going to take a while. Like again,
Right.
he's in the USHL, so then next year he's in college, and the year after he's in college, and it may even be another year, but it's at least 2 years in college, and then probably 2 years in the AHL. Like that's going to be his path because he is a bigger defenseman, and you want to make sure that he does have the right physical strength because to be able to play even the offensive game that he is used to playing, he's going to need that.
Right. And, he has a whole bunch of assists right this year,
Yes.
which makes sense for a defenseman like him. He's not a scorer, but he's going to have a bunch of assists because he'll be on that power play unit. Right. So I think that makes sense there as well.
Well, I mean, the guy we're going to talk about next segment, Ryker Lee, is his teammate on Madison, and I asked him about Moline, and he's been playing with him for 3 years, so he knows him better than anybody, and that's part of the assists are coming from Ryker Lee.
Right.
Um, but a quote that he gave me was pretty stunning. Like, really, he was like, he does everything well. He has a long reach. He can make plays offensively, get pucks up the ice. If you look at his plus minus, I think he's what, plus 25, something like that. Plus
24.
24. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it means when he's on the ice, you're in good shape. And so that reliability and some offense and the size does put him on a good path. And when players say things like that about you, that's good. And so, yeah, I mean, right now, I think he has a chance. And the fact that where he was picked, that's a really good sign.
Yeah, I think so too. So, you never know with the seventh rounder.
No.
Sometimes it happens. All right. You mentioned Ryker Lee giving us a quote about Austin Moline. And Riker is, in fact, a draft eligible prospect for this
Yes.
upcoming draft. So we're going to talk about him coming up next. All right. So Ryker Lee is a forward on Madison along with Austin Moline. He is a 6 foot tall top scorer on Madison right now. So that says a lot. That team is fourth in the Eastern Conference
Hmm.
in the USHL. So it's like they're a solid team, but not a great team
Sure.
in that
And he's
league.
their best player.
Yep. By far. Right.
Yeah. And he's a center. And right now he's 6 foot, but he's a young guy. You never know what might happen as far as growing. I got to watch him a lot because I saw him, in the Fall Classic. Then I saw him at the All American game. He won the MVP at the All American game, but I didn't go crazy and didn't bring him up on the show at that point because I still wanted to see more and see. I also got a glimpse because I was one of the few people that actually watched the skills testing that they had at the All American game because I'm just weird that way. And he really excelled at certain things, which gives you a glimpse. And so while he doesn't have the best speed yet, speed's okay, and he knows it, and he's working on it. It's going to get better. But he had really good agility, and he seemed faster when he had the puck. He was one of those
Mm.
kind of guys. that seem faster with the puck. So he knows where to go on the ice. He's smart offensively. He's got a really good shot, but he is like the hockey IQ is excellent on him. So that's something where I'm starting to put more of a value on that than some other things in the last few years, seeing probably the last 5 years, seeing now how that's working out for some players. Like Zach Benson is a good example of that. He was a guy, when I spoke to him, was like, wow, this guy was like talking to a coach. He knew so much about hockey, and he's, been a starter this year for the Sabres. So
Yeah, there's definitely something to that, and I think,
Noah
you
Cates, if
you
you want to bring it to Philly, always been a
right,
super smart guy.
right. Now, he is 8th in scoring in the USHL overall right
Yep.
now, which is fantastic. I thought it was interesting, 8 of his 19 goals so far were on the power play,
Hmm.
and that obviously piqued my interest,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, for obvious reasons. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, but, like, what do you think about his 5-on-5 game? Because I think when you see that, you can go one of 2 ways. You can like, "Oh, he'll help our power play," or, "Oh, is he gonna be ineffective at 5-on-5?"
No, his 5-on-5 game is good. I mean, I've seen him have multi-point games. It's not all on the power play. He gets his line mates involved for sure. Uh, I think he's a good passer, but I think he's a better shooter. But it's okay to be like a shark on the power play. That's nobody's going to say that's a bad thing. And some guys have gotten drafted just for that, honestly. And some of them have struggled after that, and some haven't. But I think he has enough tools in the toolbox that he'll be very he'll there'll be a lot of teams that want him. It just depends on where they want him. So, for me, it's kind of like he probably just misses out in the first round, but he's not out of it yet. I think there's still a chance for him to kind of backdoor that, but I think he's, middle of the second round towards late second round at this point.
Right, and that's where, again, the Flyers having a ton of picks,
Yes.
in the second round, like, this seems like a really good guy to use one of those picks on,
Yeah.
and
And
he is
don't say
ranked
like
kinda
as a
mid-second
fan,
round.
right. And as a fan, don't say, well, like we have Jack Berglund, don't need this guy. We got centers. Guys, centers could always play other positions, but Berglund is more defensive than he is offensive. This guy's more offensive than he is defensive. So you need that mix.
Yeah, I agree, and so you mentioned, he could sneak up a little bit. Do you think he's definitely a riser as we get
I
closer to the
do.
draft?
I do because I think every time we see him, he looks a little better. He's got a certain amount of these accolades. And so, yeah, I do think teams are really looking at him, and they'll decide at some point, but he might be one of those guys, like, as an example, back in his draft year, Scott Lawton had such a good U18 that catapulted him. And
Right.
so it could be like that.
Yeah. He is also, heading to Michigan State
Yes.
next year, which, one of the top teams in the country right now, which is, really good for him and his development.
A-
So I
And
think they would
mentally,
be
I was gonna say mentally, this kid's strong because I asked him about going into Yost Arena, playing with Michigan State, them hurling all kinds of insults at you, and he goes, "Bring it on! I like being the villain. It's fine." So he didn't even skip a beat when I said all that, and that could be a thing, like you get in there and they're all screaming at you, and they are chanting bad things about you, and he doesn't care.
So I think, it'll be a really interesting path for him, and I think that he seems like a really great option for the Flyers. Again, I say that about a
He
lot of the
does.
guys we
No, no, but
talk
he
about,
is. He is because
but
he plays a position that they need depth
right,
at. Uh, if they have the 3 picks in the first round, I wouldn't hesitate to use the last one on him, just so he's not available to somebody else
right,
in the second round.
right.
You could do that at that point, and he's the kind of guy you do it with.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But with 4 second-round picks this year, there should be plenty of opportunity to pick up guys that are, um, you know, maybe just on the cusp of
Yeah.
being guarantees, but
Yep.
aren't necessarily. And if you take that gamble on 3 of them, one of them is gonna pan out.
Right.
Like, the odds are in your favor. So,
Yes.
we will certainly add Riker to our spreadsheet There's a link in the show notes, and that is a spreadsheet of all of the draft eligible prospects we've covered so far. We'll continue to add to it. It has a link to information and the episode as well, so you can go back and listen to other segments you may have missed. That will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back Monday to talk more Four Nations, recapping all the weekend action. I will be in Boston reporting on that, so very excited to do that. Plus, it'll be Monday, so we'll have our nemesis of the week as well. Maybe it'll be travel related. Maybe it'll be Boston related. Who knows? I
Yeah, you
always
never
have
know.
something. I always have a bone to pick with Boston as a general rule. So we will talk about it then. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. If you've got mailbag questions or a draft eligible prospect you want us to cover on one of these segments, let us know via any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert. Get the edge over league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey over on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.